Brothers can be tough. They make you smell your farts, pull your pants down in front of strangers, almost drown you in the pool, and make fun of you in all the wrong times. They embarrass you, and they make you cry. And you love them, and they love you, and they'd fight a bear for you. I mean, maybe a baby bear, a cub, maybe a stuffed animal bear. Well, you know. Brothers are special. While we were kids, that's all part of the game, the fighting and stuff. Once we get into adulthood, the relationship changes, and the love usually deepens. In the Bible, there are some brothers. Jesus' brothers we'll get to, but let's start at the beginning. Cain and Abel. Well, you know how that worked out, a story of jealousy and murder. Esau and Jacob, a story of greed, treachery, and then forgiveness and love. Jacob the cat becomes the chosen one to keep the line of Abraham. And then he has sons that become brothers to the young Joseph, who is hated by them. They plot to kill him, but instead sell him into slavery. Joseph goes through some trials and winds up ruling over his brothers. One of the things as a child he said that he was going to do when he grew up, which made his brothers mad and hate him and sell him into slavery. And the cycle went on. There are tons more brothers all the way up to the brothers known as the Sons of Thunder. That's James and John, the John who writes the book we're in today in John 7, talking about the brothers. No one really even ever had the dilemma that the family of Jesus did. In Matthew 13:55 and Mark 6:3, they call out the names of the brother James, Joseph, not Jose, short for Joseph Jr., Simon, and Judas, not Iscariot, called Jude, probably the author of the book in the New Testament. Verse 56 mentions that Jesus had sisters. The sisters are not named, but since the word is plural, there were at least two of them. No one really is looking into this, but let's think about it for a second. Many of us, I guess all of us, have a past, and it would make sense for our siblings not to really have faith in us. Jesus' brothers certainly had no faith in him, even though they grew up around him and they saw a character and they knew who he was when he starts to his ministry and claims to be the Son of God. Only Mary and Joseph really know for sure because they talk to the angels, although it seems like maybe they have forgotten. Even Mary seems to have forgotten right up to the time of the wine. And as she forgets who her boy is. Maybe not forgets, but has pressed it down. But even so, Dr. Luke suggests that when Jesus was lost as a young boy, and they would go to find him, Jesus has to wind up rebuking Mary for not knowing that he would be about his Father's business. Give credit to Mary for knowing. He's not talking about Joseph. He's not there fixing the carpentry. He's there talking about God's word. So she gets some credit for that, right? All right. So when we continue to take a look, in the end, Jesus appears to the brothers, and they believe. So we know that the brothers wind up believing after they see him killed, and then they see him alive. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15:7, after he appears to James, his brother, then to all the apostles, last of all, as to the one born abnormally. Poor Paul just beats himself up. He appears to me. This is Paul talking. I am the least of the apostles, not fit to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church. But before all this happened, they didn't believe. And the lesson today is, what did Jesus do when they did not believe? When the people who should know act like they don't know, when the people that you grew up with and understand your character then don't back you up and basically must have acted like he was crazy. In fact, we see them in this passage that we talked about in the Bible study prodding him to go into public when he says he's not ready, because they either want him to get in public and prove who he is so that the people will quit ridiculing them, the brothers, and so Jesus is pressed at that point. But he sets an example here. He doesn't try to convince them. He doesn't have long discourse about who he is and why he's there. He just tells them, and he keeps doing God's business, his Father's business. He sets the example on apologetics right here, I think. He doesn't argue in prolonged bouts. He doesn't bring people to the stage and argue them down. He states the facts, answers the question. He poses the correct question in most time, the one that should have been asked in the first place, and then he moves on. Matthew 7:6 gives the reason for this, maybe. He says, do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Lest they take your word and they ignore it, and then they turn upon you, especially in public, and trample you to pieces. He says, say your piece and move on and do what you need to do to follow your calling. One thing we have to do is not get tied up with the questions that they're throwing to us through their unbelief, clouding the issue. We need to make sure that we're asking ourselves the right questions to base our next move on. We need to make sure that they're asking the right question. If not, try to get the right question out so that we can get the information to get to the root of the problem, why they don't believe, so that we can address that. A great book that walks us through asking the right question is written by the Good to Great author Jim Collins. It's called Built to Last. I love to drop names when I can, and this is a good one to have to drop. I was in the book business for a while, in the business world for over 20 years, and was able to meet and learn from some of the top authors and top company coaches. And in fact, most of those coaches coached the companies that I work for, and I got to meet these people in person. It was my privilege to work with Jim Collins in 2 breakout sessions with us and just a few people, 5 or 10, being able to ask questions one-on-one. Enough bragging for now. The book Good to Great tells a story about the good being the enemy of great. And in the book, the previous book, he talks about asking the right questions. Mostly he's really talking about finding the correct solution to a problem so that we don't quit fixing the symptoms and we actually take care of the disease. And the first question that we ask is usually the wrong question, or at least the question that is sometimes we take for granted and wind up living in the problem. Here's a great example of trying to get to the root of the problem. Let's watch this video.
If you have a weed in your yard, what happens if you cut it off at ground level? It comes back bigger, meaner, and it brings friends. The only way to fix this for good is to dig down and get the taproot. With our problems, we want to drill down to the true root cause and fix our problem permanently. And that's where 5 Whys comes in. It's a lean tool that helps us drill down past symptoms to the true root cause of a problem. Much like a small child, asking why over and over again is actually a legitimate quality improvement technique, and there's no magic to the number 5. We may ask why 3 times, 8 times, 12 times, but eventually we get past the symptoms to an actionable root cause. Sounds easy, but there is a technique to it, and the best way to learn it is by doing one. People from Shakespeare to Benjamin Franklin have referred to the parable, "For want of a nail, the kingdom was lost." Here's how it works. "Dude, you look sad. What happened?" "I lost the kingdom." "Really? Why?" "We lost the battle." "Why did that happen?" "We were short 1 warrior." "Really? Why was that?" "We were short 1 horse." "Why's that?" "He threw a shoe." "Why?" "We didn't have enough nails." For want of a nail, the kingdom was lost. So we're not just asking why randomly. For each subsequent answer, we ask why that happened until we get to a realistic, actionable cause as our terminal point. It's very easy to do these wrong, so here's a quality check. A properly done 5 Whys should read cleanly forward and backwards. As we read backwards, we can use words like thus, therefore, or might cause. We didn't have enough nails, therefore the horse threw a shoe. Thus we were short one horse, and therefore short one warrior. Thus we lost the battle, and that caused us to lose the kingdom. This one is clean both forward and backward. Here are some quick do's and don'ts. Do keep asking why. Avoid trying to force yourself into exactly 5 whys. Do use the quality check, but avoid simply asking 5 random questions. Do focus on an actionable root cause at the end and avoid taking this off into the weeds. 5 whys is a great tool to pull out and use on any problem and can be used with a team. To download your own 5 whys checklist and template, visit the link below this video. Thanks for watching.
Jesus always had the right questions to ask the leaders. He usually got it in one. Of course, he is God. It might take us 5, and sometimes 5 is not the right number. Maybe it's 10, because we must come to the solution, the reason that we're asking questions in the first place, before we stop asking questions. Jesus did always have the right questions to ask. He usually got it at 1, meaning that the leaders understood they were asking the wrong thing and should be asking themselves questions on what they were doing. Are we doing God's work like Jesus was doing, or are we like the Jewish leaders asking the wrong question? Knowing the right answers, but going the wrong direction to lead others away from our deceptions in our life, just like they did. They ask their questions like, is he really the Christ? When they should have been asking themselves, are we falsely accusing him? In the end, the question Jesus asked them condemned them. Condemned them, condemned their brothers, because he did this. He put the questions that they should be asking, the answers, put their deeds in the light. Jesus and his brothers, Jesus and the world, he basically just said, watch me and learn. And in his brother's case, they did, and they did. And we know because James becomes basically the leader of the church, the church in Jerusalem. He's the one that they bring the questions to, him and the council there. So today, let's keep Jesus' example in mind when people, even our family, doubt our sincerity. The Bible families fought and they lied and they did some despicable things. Our families probably have done so too, and certainly we have. We have done bad things. In fact, most times when we are doubted, it's built from their bad experiences with us. We need to keep that in the forefront of our minds when we're dealing with these situations. We need to state our case, not argue. And then we need to walk our talk and move on and let them watch and learn from our actions. Faith without works is dead, Jesus says. And James says in his book, faith without doing something with that information is dead. Are you dead today? Is that the question you should ask? Or the question you should ask is, how can I be more alive? Stay with us. We are glad you've joined us today, and we appreciate